So this happened about a month ago, and I'm still reeling from the aftermath. I, 34M, live in a relatively quiet neighborhood in a mid-sized city. I work from home as a freelance editor, which means I keep weird hours, often work in pajamas, and have an unhealthy obsession with DoorDash and oversized coffee mugs. I've lived in this house for about 5 years now. Most of the neighbors are chill. Retirees, young couples, a single dad down the street with twin toddlers. But next door, a new guy moved in about 3 months ago. Late 20s, maybe 30. His name's Derek. Tall, neat hair, always in fitted t-shirts and gym shorts, drives a hybrid, the kind of person who always waves too enthusiastically. Super friendly, but intense. He's one of those people who gives you the vibe that he's either going to invite you to a barbecue or a pyramid scheme pitch. Or both. So Derek moves in, we do the neighborly introductions, and we make awkward small talk about the garbage collection schedule and HOA rules. He seems harmless. He even brings over cookies the first week, which I pretend to eat. I have a minor paranoia about accepting homemade food from strangers. Blame my overprotective mom and a healthy dose of true crime podcasts. Now, here's where things start to go sideways. So, as I said, I work odd hours and I sometimes take movement breaks where I throw on some music and just dance it out in the living room like a maniac. It's therapeutic, okay? Sometimes it's techno, sometimes it's 90s boy bands. Occasionally it's Gregorian chanting mixed with EDM. Look it up. It's a vibe. Anyway, one night I'm deep in the zone. I've got candles lit because I like the ambience. I'm wearing this oversized maroon robe I bought at a Renaissance fair, and I've got this playlist blasting that's mostly throat singing and tribal drums. I'm barefoot, eyes closed, arms flailing in what I thought was interpretive dance, but might honestly have looked like I was exorcising demons. And of course, that's the night Derek chooses to drop off a package that got mistakenly delivered to him. The doorbell rings, I don't hear it. He peeks through the side window. The curtains are mostly open because I live like an oblivious idiot. And he sees me. Mid-dance. Candlelight flickering. Hooded robe. Chanting music echoing. I don't realize this until the next morning when I go outside and see the package sitting on my porch, along with a little note. Hey man. Didn't want to interrupt your thing. Hope this made it to the right realm. D. I laugh. Think it's funny. Maybe a little weird, but whatever. I text him a thank you and throw in a joke. Thanks for the delivery. The spirits were pleased. Your offering has been accepted. His response is, folded hands, blessed be. Still joking, right? The next week, I'm outside doing yard work. He comes over and very casually asks what temple I belong to. I assume he's talking about yoga or something, so I say I don't really go to a temple. I'm more of a solo practitioner of peace and chaos. I thought I was being witty. He nods like I've just told him I worship Odin or something and starts asking if I'd be open to speaking at his podcast. Turns out Derek runs a podcast called Unveiled Paths, where he interviews people about their alternative spiritual experiences. He's done episodes with Reiki healers, lucid dreamers, a woman who claims she can talk to bees telepathically. I listened to a few episodes out of curiosity and realize, oh no, he 100% thinks I'm in a cult. I try to clarify. I explain that no, I'm not in a cult. I just like weird music and own a fancy robe. He laughs a little, but doesn't seem convinced. He starts stopping me more often, asking me questions like, when did you first hear the calling? And how does your order interpret the cycle of moons? At this point, I should have shut it down. But no. My idiot brain thought it would be funnier to lean in. So I start making stuff up. I tell him our group meets on solstice nights and dances under the stars to honor the echo. I invent names like the spiral tongue and the ember crown. I say that new members are woven in via a ritual involving matcha, silence, and interpretive movement. I say no phones are allowed, only vibes. He eats it up. 2 weeks later, he drops off a hand-bound notebook with sketches he's made of what he thinks my symbol might be based on a chalk circle he saw on my driveway. I had spilled powdered sugar and didn't clean it properly. He tells me he wants to learn more and that he's been reading about energy centers and the ancient connection between bees and portals. I panic. I try to ghost him. But then he shows up one night wearing all white linen and asks if he can observe the next spiral. He's holding a freaking crystal and a thermos of homemade kombucha. I freeze. I'm in gym shorts eating Cheetos. I have no idea what to say. I tell him the spiral's been delayed due to cosmic dissonance. He nods solemnly and asks if there's a purification he can perform in the meantime. It's gotten so bad that I now have to pretend to be out of town during equinoxes. I schedule fake calendar events called Celestial Return and Feast of Whispers, just in case he somehow peeks at my digital calendar. I don't know how, but I'm scared now. My girlfriend came over last week, and he saw her leaving in the morning. He winked and said, the Crimson Guest has come to you. I don't even know what that means. Neither does she. Now, she thinks I'm part of some eyes wide shut thing. Last night, he left a small bundle of herbs on my doorstep with a note that said, "For your journey, burn under a waxing crescent. Beware the scent of lemons." So yeah, I've officially lost control of the bit. I accidentally created a fake cult, convinced a very enthusiastic neighbor I'm a mystic leader, and now I can't even mow my lawn without wondering if he's watching from his window trying to decipher if it's part of a sacred rite. Moral of the story: don't dance in robes near windows. Or maybe, don't lie about being in a cult unless you're ready to found one. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. TIFU by accidentally ruining my best friend's wedding, and now I'm banned from ever attending any future events. This story starts a few months ago. I, 28M, have been friends with Sarah, 29F, since we were both in middle school. We've been through everything together: high school drama, college heartbreaks, and a lot of wild nights in our early 20s. Sarah and I have always been the type of friends who are inseparable. We tell each other everything, and I'm proud to say I've always been there for her through thick and thin. So when she told me she was getting married to Jack, 30M, the love of her life, I was over the moon for her. Of course, I was honored when she asked me to be her best man. I was nervous, but it was a huge privilege. The wedding planning went on for months, and I, as the best man, took on more responsibilities than I expected. I had to organize the bachelor party, coordinate the groom's side of the wedding, and help with the rehearsal dinner. I thought I was handling everything pretty well, until one stupid, terrible, catastrophic mistake. It all started on the day of the wedding. The venue was beautiful, a sprawling vineyard upstate with rolling hills and vintage barns. Sarah had always dreamed of a rustic, elegant wedding, and this place couldn't have been more perfect. The weather was absolutely flawless, the kind of sunny, cool day you imagine when you think of a perfect wedding. Guests were trickling in, and I was pacing around in my tux, checking in on the groom and making sure everything was in place. I was calm, cool, collected until I wasn't. The biggest part of my job as the best man was to give a speech. And that speech? I'd spent weeks writing it. I poured my heart into it. I made sure it was heartfelt but funny, touching but lighthearted. I wanted to make everyone laugh and cry a little, all while keeping it respectful to Sarah and Jack. This speech had to be perfect. Right before the ceremony began, Sarah came up to me and asked if I could grab the rings from the safe in the back of the reception hall. She was a little frazzled, but seemed calm enough. "Of course, no problem," I said, walking off to grab them. What she didn't tell me was that the rings were actually in her grandmother's old safe, which had a bizarre, old-school combination lock. To be honest, I had no clue how to open it. Now, let me take a step back for a second. I have a habit of being a little bit, let's say, overconfident. I don't always ask for help when I should, especially when it's something as simple as opening a safe. I thought to myself, how hard could it be? I'm a smart guy. I'll figure this out. I pulled up my phone and Googled how to open a combination lock. All I needed was the right numbers, right? I found a couple of YouTube videos, watched them with shaky hands, and tried to apply the techniques. The numbers on the safe were worn and barely legible, but I figured I could guess. First try? Nothing. Second try? No luck. I could hear people gathering outside, and the ceremony was about to begin. Sweat started dripping down my face. I had no time left. In a last-ditch attempt to save face, I decided to do what any desperate person might do. I tried to force the lock open. This was my first mistake. I gave the dial one hard turn, a bit too forceful, and the lock made a strange clicking noise. For a moment, I thought I had actually cracked it. The dial spun more easily, and I thought I was home free. But when I pulled on the door, the safe didn't open. Instead, a loud snap echoed throughout the hall, and I watched in horror as the door of the safe flew open, and a small cloud of dust, old paper, and, to my horror, the rings were gone. They weren't gone in a dramatic, horror movie way. They were gone in a they slid into the back of the safe and are now impossible to retrieve kind of way. The rings had fallen out of the small compartment, and now they were lodged behind a panel that I couldn't even begin to reach. In my panic, I tried to shake the safe, rattle it, move it, do anything to get those damn rings back. The sound of my frantic efforts was undoubtedly echoing through the entire venue, but at that moment, I was beyond caring. With no other option, I did what any person would do. I called Sarah. I'll never forget the coldness in her voice when I told her, "I can't get the rings. They've fallen behind the safe, and I can't reach them." There was a long pause. Then she asked, "What do you mean you can't reach them? You just need to open it." I explained again. I tried to open it. I tried everything. I can't get them. I'm so sorry. That's when the shouting started. At first, it was just her telling me I'd ruined everything, that this was the most important part of the day, and I was her best man. "You're supposed to have it all together," she screamed, but then, the worst part, she hung up on me. At that moment, I knew I had just completely ruined everything. Sarah had entrusted me with her dream wedding, and I had failed her miserably. I spent the next hour running around in a frantic panic, trying to find some way to make it work. I had no idea where the wedding bands had gone. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror, let alone face the crowd of people gathering for the ceremony. The only thing I could think to do was call Jack, the groom. He was surprisingly calm on the phone when I told him what happened. "Don't worry, man. We can figure this out," he said. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. When Sarah finally came back to me, she was livid. The entire ceremony was delayed. The guests were getting restless, and my phone was blowing up with texts from people asking where the rings were. Her family was furious with me. The entire wedding had to be postponed for hours. The bridal party was in chaos, and Sarah refused to talk to me for the rest of the day. After the wedding was, well, saved, with a replacement ring set that didn't fit, but at least it was something, Sarah made it very clear to me that I was no longer welcome at her wedding reception. In fact, I wasn't allowed to attend any future events. I had ruined her day, and the friendship was, for all intents and purposes, over. In the end, I never got to give the best man speech I'd worked so hard on. The replacement rings didn't even make it into the ceremony until an hour after it was supposed to start, and I lost my best friend in the process. To this day, I have no idea how I can make up for what I did. I wish I could go back and do it all differently, but the rings are still stuck behind the safe, and I'm banned from ever attending any future weddings of hers. TLDR, ruined my best friend's wedding by breaking the combination lock on the safe where the rings were, causing a delay that led to her not speaking to me again and banning me from any future events. TIFU by accidentally sending a love letter to my boss, and now my career is hanging by a thread. So here's the deal. I've been working at my current job for almost 2 years now, and I genuinely like it. It's not my dream job or anything, but it's a solid position with good benefits, a decent salary, and I've developed some good relationships with my coworkers. Nothing too crazy, just your standard office stuff. I've been on the job hunt for something more fulfilling, but I haven't had any luck yet, so I've been sticking it out. Now, here's where things take a turn. A few weeks ago, I met someone online through a dating app. We had a lot in common, and after a couple of weeks of texting, we made plans to meet up. Honestly, I felt like things were going pretty well. The chemistry was undeniable, and I was actually feeling really excited. The thing is, I'm not the best when it comes to communication. I tend to get nervous and overthink everything, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. So, I decided to write her a letter. A physical letter, like a real grown-up person. I've always felt that the written word holds a certain level of intimacy that texting just can't match, and I wanted to put in the effort to show her how much I was into her. After all, she was the first person I had genuinely connected with in a long time, and I wanted to make sure she knew I wasn't just some guy swiping through profiles. I spent hours writing this thing. I poured my heart into it. I didn't want to make it too cheesy, but I also didn't want it to be too impersonal. I was going for something romantic, thoughtful, and just a little bit vulnerable. I even used some fancy stationery that I had lying around from an old graduation gift. I was going all out. The thing is, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. After I wrote the letter, I sat on it for a day to review it and make sure I hadn't said anything that sounded ridiculous. As I reread it, I realized I wanted to add a little more, so I grabbed my laptop to make some tweaks. I thought it would be more efficient than handwriting out another draft. Now, I was in the middle of a pretty hectic workday. I had some reports to submit, emails to send, and a meeting coming up. But I figured I'd knock out the edits on the letter while I was taking a quick break. So I pulled up my email to send the letter as an attachment and opened a new draft. In the back of my mind, I was thinking I'd just copy-paste the content from the letter into the email body, attach the edited document, and send it off. I wanted to make sure the email was clean, no weird formatting, no awkward typos, just a nice, tidy package. But here's where the chaos begins. For some reason, my email system automatically pulled up a recent contact when I started typing in the to field. Now, mind you, I hadn't sent anything to anyone in a few days, so my inbox was relatively clear. The contact that popped up was my boss, let's call him Tom. I know. You're probably already cringing, but hang in there. Tom is a cool guy, but we've never really had a super personal relationship. He's my superior, and while we've exchanged pleasantries about work and the occasional joke, that's pretty much it. So, in my half-caffeinated, overworked, distracted state, I didn't think twice about it. I thought the name was a little weird, but figured it was just a fluke. I clicked the email field and went to paste my letter in. I didn't notice what had happened until it was too late. I had sent the email. I didn't even realize I had hit the send button. But I had, and there it was. An email with a subject line, "A letter for you," which is so much worse than just saying letter. Attached to my deeply personal, borderline embarrassing love letter, and it was sent straight to my boss. At first, I thought I had to be imagining it. There's no way that happened. I immediately opened my sent folder, and sure enough, it was there. The full email, including the attachment, went straight to Tom. I'm pretty sure my heart stopped. I stared at the screen in pure panic, unable to move, as a wave of horror washed over me. It was one of those moments where you wish you could just rewind time and go back a few seconds, but there's no one doing it. I frantically opened the email to see if I could somehow recall it or do damage control, but of course, that's not a feature in email. I panicked for about 5 minutes trying to figure out what to do. Should I email him back, say I made a mistake, and that it was meant for someone else? Should I just pretend nothing happened? Should I just quit my job and move to the mountains and live as a hermit? None of those options felt right. And frankly, none of them would solve the mess I'd just made. After some deep breaths, I decided to be honest. I sent him a follow-up email. I'm not proud of the wording, but I was completely freaking out, so I just typed out, "Hey Tom, I just realized that I accidentally sent you an email that was meant for someone else. I apologize for the confusion. The content of that email is very personal, and I'm mortified. I understand if you find this unprofessional, and I'm willing to take any steps necessary to ensure this doesn't reflect poorly on my work performance. Again, I'm really sorry." I hit send, but I was still convinced I'd just ruined my career. How could I ever look him in the eye again? What if he thought I was unprofessional or, worse, weird? It was a love letter, for crying out loud. How could I explain that away? The rest of the day was torture. Every time I saw Tom, I expected him to have some snarky remark or to pull me aside for a talk. But to my surprise, he didn't bring it up. In fact, he didn't mention it at all. I figured maybe he was just trying to ignore it, or perhaps he was too awkward to say anything. Either way, I was dying inside. The next morning, though, I got an email from him. He wrote, "Hey, no problem. I get it. Just be careful with those attachments next time. I'll pretend I didn't see anything. But if you ever need to chat about anything, work-related or otherwise, let me know. Take care. That was it. No weird comments. No judgment. Just okay. I still have no idea why he didn't bring it up in person, but I guess it worked out in the end. I've been walking around with a slightly redder face ever since, but at least I didn't get fired. Moral of the story? Be extra careful when you send emails, and maybe save the love letters for after work. TLDR. Accidentally sent a personal love letter meant for my date to my boss. Almost had a heart attack, but somehow managed to avoid a disaster by emailing him back and apologizing. My career is still intact for now. TIFU by trying to impress my crush with my cooking skills and accidentally starting a small kitchen fire. So, a bit of context. I'm not exactly what you'd call a great cook. I've never really been into it. Growing up, I was more of a microwave and delivery kind of guy. But lately, I've been talking to this girl, let's call her Sarah, who's super into food. She's one of those people who makes everything from scratch, knows what goes into a perfect omelet, and can whip up a 3-course meal like it's no big deal. I, on the other hand, could barely make a grilled cheese without setting off the smoke alarm. But I thought, hey, if I impress her with a homemade dinner, maybe she'll think I'm a little more interesting. That's where the mistake happened. I decided to go all in. I'd heard her talking about this amazing pasta dish she once had at a restaurant, so I figured, how hard can it be? Just pasta, sauce, garlic, a few spices. Right?
Wrong.
First, I went to the store with all the confidence in the world, grabbing what I thought were the ingredients I needed. There was one crucial item I couldn't find, the right kind of pasta. I don't know why, but for some reason, I couldn't find anything except spaghetti, penne, and bow tie pasta. I started getting this weird feeling that maybe the universe was telling me I wasn't cut out for this. But then I spotted some rigatoni, and I thought, close enough. I also grabbed a bottle of olive oil because, in my mind, olive oil was a fancy ingredient. Never mind that I had no idea how to use it properly, I just thought it sounded sophisticated. I grabbed a few cloves of garlic because, garlic is a must for anything Italian, right? And some fresh basil. I was feeling pretty good about myself, strolling around the store with a cart full of food like a pro. I even picked up a nice bottle of red wine to impress Sarah, thinking it would add a touch of class to the evening. When I got home, I was a little nervous. I've watched cooking shows before, so I thought I knew the basics. But still, I had no idea what I was doing. I pulled out the recipe I found online, which had a few too many words for my liking, but I was determined to follow it. I started with the garlic. I'd heard somewhere that it's important not to burn it, so I tossed the chopped cloves into the pan with a generous amount of olive oil. I cranked the heat up because I assumed high heat meant faster cooking, and that's when the first red flag should have gone up. But I was too busy feeling like a pro to notice. After a minute, I added the tomatoes. Well, a can of crushed tomatoes, because fresh ones weren't on sale, and waited for everything to simmer. My kitchen smelled like a mixture of garlic and olive oil, which I took as a sign that things were going great. I dumped in the rigatoni, figuring pasta cooking was the easiest part. I threw it in the pot of boiling water. Again, cranked up the heat, and hoped for the best. Everything was going according to plan, so I set the table, poured myself a glass of wine, and called Sarah to let her know everything was ready. She was excited, and that made me feel like maybe I wasn't the disaster I feared I might be. And that's when it all started to go downhill. I should have noticed the smell first. It wasn't the savory, delicious aroma I was expecting. It was more like something was burning. I turned around and saw smoke billowing from the pan. I'd completely forgotten that the garlic was still on the stove. Apparently, the heat was way too high, and I'd charred it beyond recognition. But instead of panicking, I thought, it's fine. I'll just add more tomatoes to mask the burnt taste. I went to the pan, tried stirring it, and noticed something. The pan was getting really, really hot. Like, unnaturally hot. I suddenly remembered the whole "don't leave oil on a hot stove unattended" thing that my mom used to yell at me about. At this point, I was running out of time, and Sarah was about to arrive. I couldn't ruin this. I went into full panic mode. I grabbed a dish towel, tried to cover the pan to keep it from getting worse, but the dish towel caught fire. I don't know why, but I panicked even harder and threw it directly into the sink, which made the flames grow for a split second. The fire alarm in my kitchen went off.
I'm not talking about a gentle beep.
I'm talking about that obnoxious, soul-crushing, ear-piercing screech that makes you want to crawl under a blanket and never leave your house again. I immediately opened all the windows, grabbed the fire extinguisher from the cupboard because I've seen enough disaster movies to know you should have one, and tried to use it on the small fire in the pan. Big mistake. Instead of extinguishing the flames, I somehow made things worse. I must have overdid it with the spray because it went everywhere. The kitchen looked like a disaster zone, and the fire wasn't the only thing causing chaos. The foam from the extinguisher got all over the counter, the floor, and even the wine bottle I had opened earlier. My kitchen was covered in this chalky mess, and the smell of burnt garlic was mixing with the scent of fire extinguisher powder. At this point, I heard the doorbell. Sarah had arrived. I wiped my hands on my pants, which was probably not a good idea, considering the mess, and with the fire still smoldering in the pan, I opened the door. Sarah stood there with a big smile, holding a bottle of white wine. "Hey," she said, stepping inside. "I brought some wine. How's it going in here?" I could only stare blankly at the mess behind me. The kitchen was a nightmare. There was a faint smoke haze in the air, the fire extinguisher foam was everywhere, and the smell. God, the smell was awful. "Well, we've had a small issue," I said, trying to laugh it off. "But don't worry, I've got this under control." "Under control?" She raised an eyebrow, glancing at the smoke and foam. "You sure about that?" I think I might have, set the kitchen on fire a little bit," I admitted, knowing full well how ridiculous it sounded. She took one look at the pan, then at me, and burst into laughter. "Oh my God, what happened in here?" I was mortified, but for some reason, her laughter made me feel a little better. We spent the next half hour cleaning up the mess, Sarah teaching me the basics of cooking, and me promising to never, ever try to cook a fancy meal again. We ended up ordering pizza and watching a movie, which was honestly way better than the disaster I'd initially planned. So yeah, long story short, I tried to impress my crush with cooking, set the kitchen on fire, and ended up with pizza and a good laugh instead. Not exactly the romantic dinner I had envisioned, but at least it gave us a good story to tell. Moral of the story: sometimes it's better to just stick with what you know. And maybe don't try to cook a full meal when you've never even boiled pasta before. TIFU by accidentally sending my nudes to my mom and then pretending it was a prank. It all started on a lazy Saturday afternoon. I had just finished cleaning my apartment and decided to treat myself to a little Netflix binge. As I lounged on the couch, I realized that I hadn't texted my mom in a while. So, I picked up my phone to check in and send her a quick message. Little did I know, this innocent gesture would turn into the most mortifying moment of my life. You see, earlier that day, I had been texting a guy I had been casually seeing. We had been flirting back and forth for a few weeks, and things had been heating up. After a few suggestive texts and some back-and-forth conversation, we both agreed to send some intimate pictures. I'm sure you've all been there, flirting, getting swept up in the moment, and then before you know it, you're both sending pictures you wouldn't want anyone else to see. I thought I had been careful. I was just about to send the last one when I got distracted. My phone buzzed with a message from my mom. Now, here's the kicker. I use a group chat with my family, my mom, dad, and 2 younger brothers. We mostly talk about plans, family dinners, and random things. My mom is very tech-savvy and loves using emojis, so she's a pretty regular presence in our little family group. Normally, I'm careful with the things I send in that chat, keeping it all PG and friendly. I thought I was opening the text thread with my mom specifically to reply to her message. She had been asking about my plans for the weekend. However, I was so distracted by what was happening on my other phone screen that I didn't double-check. I absent-mindedly opened the wrong message thread, the family group chat. I hit send. I stared at the screen, not realizing at first what I had just done. But as the image started to load, I froze in horror. It was my nude, which I had been planning to send to my guy. But now it was on its way to my mom. I immediately panicked and tried to cancel the message, but it was already too late. The image had already been delivered. For a moment, I thought I might die. I felt my chest tighten, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. What do I even do now? What do I say? I mean, how do you recover from sending something like that to your mother, who has been nothing but supportive throughout your life? I did what anyone in my position would do. I started furiously texting my mom. Mom, no, 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 please don't open that. I typed, my fingers trembling. There was no immediate response. My phone felt like it was burning in my hand. Then it buzzed. Got it, she texted back.
Got it?
I was going to puke.
Did she see it?
Did she open it? Did she know it was me? Before I could come up with any coherent response, my mom sent another message. What is this, honey? Is this a new meme or something? I don't get it. I stared at those words for a moment, blinking in confusion. She didn't understand? Was she really not going to acknowledge it? My mind was racing. Was she trying to protect me by pretending she hadn't seen what she had? Did she actually not see it? I started typing, trying to salvage the situation. Oh my God, Mom. That was a total mistake. It wasn't meant for you. It's a meme. Yeah, a meme. It was a joke. A joke I was going to send to my friends. It's not real. I was digging myself into an even deeper hole, but I had to go with it. I couldn't admit what had actually happened. I was trying to make it seem like I was in on some weird meme culture and had sent something by accident. Maybe she would buy it, right? To my surprise, she responded, "Oh, okay, that makes sense now." I thought it was some new Snapchat filter or something. I never really get those things. Kids these days have all these weird memes. My jaw dropped. She really bought it? Was she just pretending to be cool about it? Or did she honestly have no idea what she had just received? I was still in shock. I didn't even know what to say next. After a few moments, I decided to push my luck. Yeah, Mom. Totally. So, anyway, about this weekend. But she immediately interrupted with another text. I just want to say, honey, I appreciate that you're trying to keep up with modern humor, but I'm not a fan of the risque stuff, right?
My heart sank.
She had seen it. She was definitely hinting that she understood it wasn't a joke and that she had seen something more than just a meme. My worst fears were coming true. And yet, somehow, she was still playing along. Now, I was desperately trying to backtrack without outright admitting what I had done. I tried to lighten the mood, thinking maybe humor could be my savior. Yeah, Mom, I totally get it. You know how these things go. Anyway, let's not focus on that. What's for dinner tonight? Thankfully, my mom dropped the subject. After what felt like the longest few minutes of my life, she responded with, "Lasagna. Your dad's making it. You should come over." I stared at my phone in a mix of disbelief and relief. The tension I had been carrying for what felt like hours finally started to ease. But I couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation. My mom had definitely seen what I didn't want her to see, and I was left wondering if she would ever bring it up again. I spent the next few hours trying to forget about it, but the anxiety was unbearable. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be a follow-up from my mom asking about what had happened. Or worse, telling me she had shared it with someone else. Finally, a few days later, I went to my parents' house for dinner. As I walked through the door, my mom greeted me with a smile, just like everything was normal. She didn't act weird, didn't bring up the picture, and didn't make a single comment about it. We sat down for dinner, and for a while, I thought I had gotten away with it. But then, halfway through the meal, my mom casually said, "By the way, honey, I'm proud of you for being so open with me. I know it can be awkward talking about, well, certain things, but I think it's really important to keep an open dialogue. So if you ever need to talk about, that stuff, I'm always here. Just don't send any more memes like that one, okay?" I nearly choked on my lasagna. I had to swallow my pride and just nod.
Yeah, Mom.
Definitely. No more memes like that. And that's how I spent the next hour pretending that everything was normal, all while dying inside. Moral of the story? Double-check your messages before you send them, especially when your family is involved. And if you do end up making an irreversible mistake, pray your mom has a great sense of humor, or at least is really, really good at pretending. TIFU by accidentally giving my mom a heart attack, and then making it worse. It all started last Thursday. My mom, the kind of woman who doesn't let anything slide without making a point about it, had called me for help with setting up a new TV. She had been talking about upgrading to a smart TV for months, but had absolutely no idea how to set it up. Of course, my mom, being my mom, wasn't the type to read any of the manuals. So, when I got the call, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was going to be summoned over to her house to do all the techie stuff, and she was going to watch me like a hawk the whole time. I love my mom, but let's just say that when it comes to technology, we are like oil and water. I'm good with tech, and she's good at questioning every little thing I do. I showed up around 3 p.m., expecting a quick job of hooking up a TV, configuring some apps, and then leaving. Simple. In my mind, this was going to be in and out. I was in for a huge surprise. So, I get there, and my mom's already in the living room with her new TV sitting there in its massive, unsightly box. She's already been bugging me all morning about when I was going to show up to get it hooked up, and I think I know what's coming. "Hey, honey, you're here," she says with that unnerving chipperness, as if she hasn't been texting me every 5 minutes all day asking me when I'm getting there. I tell her I'm ready to get started, but first, I need a coffee. She hands me a mug and starts in on her usual routine of asking what I've been up to, what my work is like, and the usual mom interrogation. I drink my coffee, trying to keep it cool while her questions are coming in rapid fire. Once I'm done, I take the TV out of the box, lay it out on the stand, and try to get things connected. Mom is, as usual, hovering over my shoulder, making small comments about how the TV looks too big for the space or how it seems too modern. It's clear that my mom's comfort zone is an old 32-inch flat screen, so this 55-inch smart TV is a bit much for her. As I'm plugging in the HDMI cables, she starts rambling about how when she was growing up, TVs didn't need to be plugged into the wall with all this newfangled tech. I've heard this story at least 50 times. I hum along, not really paying attention, trying to focus on getting the right input so we can watch Netflix or whatever. Then, out of nowhere, my mom says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I got a new security system installed. It's all connected to the TV. You can monitor everything from there now." Now, this is where I should have been more cautious. You see, my mom lives alone in a big, old house, and she's been paranoid about break-ins for a while. So, I'm used to her being a little over the top when it comes to home security. But hearing that the security system was now somehow integrated with the TV struck me as odd. It sounded like a setup for a disaster, but I didn't know how exactly it would play out. "Wait, what?" I ask. "How does that work?" "Oh, you'll see," she says, as if she's just discovered the secret to world peace. "I can get live feeds from the cameras straight on the TV. Watch this." Before I could stop her, she grabs the remote and presses a button. I hear the sound of static and, for a split second, the TV flashes to a feed from the backyard camera. It's just the usual view of her garden, the fence, the shed, and a few random birds pecking around. But then, just as quickly as the feed appeared, the screen goes black. I hear my mom gasp. "Mom? What happened?" I ask, my voice laced with concern. I'm thinking that maybe she hit the wrong button, or there's some glitch. She presses the remote again, but nothing happens. Her face starts to go pale. She presses it again, more frantically now. Still nothing. "Mom, relax. I'm sure it's just a minor issue. Let me check," I say, trying to keep the situation under control. She grabs my arm, her grip tight.
No.
This isn't right. What if someone is in the house? What if they've hacked into the system? Her eyes are wide, with panic now. It's starting to feel like one of those bad crime movies, but I'm not prepared for what comes next. "Mom, there's nothing to worry about. The feed probably just cut out because of the weather or something." I try to sound calm, but my heart starts to race. I don't know anything about her security system, and my mom's hysteria is starting to make me second-guess myself. I'm about to start checking the TV settings when suddenly, I hear the back door slam open. I freeze. In the split second that follows, I hear footsteps. For some insane reason, I don't know why my first instinct was to yell, "It's the robbers." It was like something from an action movie. Without thinking, I bolt toward the back door, my heart hammering in my chest. My mom follows behind me, and now, Both of us are running through the house like lunatics. I'm about to run out into the yard to check if someone is breaking in when I see it. The back door has swung open on its own because my mom, in her frantic state, had accidentally nudged it open while trying to get the security system working. "Mom," I shout. "It was just the wind. You left the door open." But it's too late. My mom, already worked up into a full-blown panic, looks like she's about to collapse. She grabs her chest and falls to the ground. My stomach drops. "Oh my God, Mom." I immediately rush to her side, calling her name, shaking her a little. She's barely breathing, her face going pale. This was not a drill. In a moment of complete panic, I rush to the phone and call 911, but I can barely speak, barely form words. I can't get a full sentence out, and I'm trying to explain to the dispatcher that I think my mom is having a heart attack. As soon as they show up, I'm frantically explaining everything that happened, how I thought someone was breaking in, how we panicked, and how my mom collapsed. But when the paramedics check her, they find that it wasn't a heart attack, thank God. It turns out she was just having a major anxiety attack triggered by her fear of burglars and the fact that I screamed, "It's the robbers." She spent the next couple of hours at the hospital being checked out, and I spent the time apologizing over and over, feeling like the world's biggest idiot. Turns out, the whole breaking in thing wasn't real at all. The door had just opened by accident. The security system had also cut out because of a minor malfunction. When my mom finally came home, I thought she'd be angry with me. Instead, she just said, "I'm never trusting you with technology again." She even laughed about it, but I knew she was still a little shaken. And me? I was still processing the fact that I nearly gave my mom a heart attack by yelling, "It's the robbers," when I should have just checked the damn door. Lesson learned: never scream, "It's the robbers," in a house with someone who has a history of panic attacks. Also, always make sure the doors are closed before you freak out. TLDR, tried to help my mom with her new smart TV and security system, panicked thinking someone was breaking in, screamed, "It's the robbers," and gave her a heart attack scare. TIFU by accidentally sending my boss a very inappropriate email meant for my girlfriend. It all started last Friday afternoon. I was having a pretty typical day at work, busy, trying to finish up some last-minute tasks, preparing for the weekend, and dodging small talk with coworkers who were already checked out for the day. I'd been dating my girlfriend for a few months, and we'd been having a lot of fun. But like any new relationship, we were still in that phase where everything was exciting and playful. That meant lots of texting and sending each other silly messages, sometimes with a lot of inside jokes or emojis that would probably make anyone else cringe. It wasn't all serious, but I guess you could say we had a certain vibe. Now, I work in a fairly conservative office, and my boss, who we'll call Mr. Andrews, is a no-nonsense kind of guy. He's been with the company for over 15 years and holds an air of authority that demands respect. His emails are usually professional, to the point, and incredibly boring. He's not the kind of person you'd imagine even sending a joke, let alone having a sense of humor. Anyway, earlier that morning, Mr. Andrews had asked me to send him some reports by the end of the day. No problem, I thought. I got it all wrapped up by 4 p.m. and attached the reports to an email, ready to send. My day was almost done, and all I needed to do was click send, and I'd be off to enjoy the weekend. But of course, fate had other plans. As I went to send the email to Mr. Andrews, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my girlfriend. She had sent a text that made me laugh out loud, one of those hilarious and flirty exchanges we had that only we would understand. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone, grinning as I typed back a playful response. Here's where the mistake happened. I was so distracted by my phone, trying to think of the perfect witty reply, that I didn't pay attention when I switched back to my laptop. I had opened a new email draft to Mr. Andrews, but instead of clicking on my inbox to search for the draft I had started earlier, I accidentally hit the compose button. Without realizing it, I opened up a brand new blank email. I didn't realize I was composing a completely new email until after I had already typed the first line of what was supposed to be a response to my girlfriend. The message read, "Hey babe, can't wait to see you tonight. I'm definitely going to show you how much I missed you. Winking face, I've been thinking about you all day, and I'm feeling really excited to see what happens when you wear that dress you know I love." At this point, I noticed my fingers had completely taken over, typing out the rest of the message without even processing what was happening. I was halfway through typing, "I hope you're ready to be thoroughly spoiled tonight," when I realized with a sinking feeling that I wasn't typing this into my phone's texting app. No, I was typing it into the email that I had intended to send to my boss. I glanced at the to field. It said Mr. Andrews. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. The panic hit immediately. I was only a few lines away from sending this incredibly inappropriate and explicit message to my boss, the guy I've been working under for almost 2 years. The guy who had given me plenty of performance reviews, but never once indicated he was interested in what I was doing in my personal life, let alone my, well, intimate life. I instantly slapped my hands over my face and started frantically typing, trying to delete the email, but I was moving too quickly, my fingers shaking as I tried to erase the words. By the time I hit backspace a few times, I had already accidentally clicked send. The email was on its way. My stomach dropped. The pit in my chest grew deeper. I couldn't breathe. My immediate reaction was to grab my phone and text my girlfriend, explaining that I'd messed up big time. But then I stopped. I realized that if I sent her a message, she'd be just as horrified as I was, and I couldn't even begin to explain what had happened to her. I stared at the screen, not knowing what to do. Should I apologize immediately? Should I just wait for the inevitable humiliation? Was there a way to recover from this? I paced back and forth, considering my options. Then, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Mr. Andrews. I stared at the message for a few seconds, my heart beating faster with each passing second. It read, "Hey, got your email. You're right, I should probably let you know I'm going to be out of the office next week for a conference, but I'm a little confused. I'm not sure what this dress is about, and I'm definitely not sure what you mean by spoil. I was expecting the report, but this seems to be more personal. Let me know what's going on." I blinked at the message. My mind was reeling. So far, he hadn't acknowledged the inappropriate content of the email, but instead, he seemed confused. I realized, with an overwhelming sense of dread, that I had sent him a borderline suggestive email that was full of sexual innuendo. I felt like I wanted to crawl under my desk and never come back to work again. I tried to think of a response. How could I possibly explain this? I couldn't just say, "Sorry, wrong email."
He'd never buy it.
He would think I was either unprofessional or completely insane. And yet, it was the truth. But then, inspiration struck. A small, unspoken miracle happened. Instead of immediately typing out a panicked reply, I took a deep breath and decided to turn the whole thing into a joke. After all, what was the alternative? I was already in too deep to make things worse. I typed back, "Mr. Andrews, I must sincerely apologize for the confusion. It seems I mixed up some personal messages with a work email. I'm embarrassed, but I hope you can understand that it was completely accidental. As for the dress comment, please disregard it. It was meant for my girlfriend. Again, I apologize for the inappropriate tone and will ensure this doesn't happen again. The reports will follow shortly. Thank you for your understanding." I hit send and braced for impact. To my surprise, Mr. Andrews replied shortly after, "No problem, kid. We all have moments where we send the wrong thing. Just make sure to double-check next time. No harm done. And by the way, the reports look good." I sat there in disbelief. He didn't fire me. He didn't even seem all that upset. Instead, it was like he found the whole thing amusing. Later that day, I texted my girlfriend and told her everything, and she found it hilarious, even though I was still dying inside. So, TLDR, accidentally sent an inappropriate text meant for my girlfriend to my boss, who somehow took it in stride and didn't fire me. I nearly died of embarrassment, but thankfully, I didn't get into too much trouble. TIFU by trying to impress my date with a home-cooked meal and ending up in the ER. So, this happened a few weeks ago, and I'm still cringing whenever I think about it. It all started when I matched with this amazing girl on a dating app. She was smart, funny, and, to top it all off, she seemed genuinely interested in me. After a few days of chatting, we decided to meet up in person. Now, I've always considered myself a pretty decent cook. I'm not a gourmet chef, but I can whip up a mean pasta or stir-fry. When we made plans to have a dinner date at my place, I thought, hey, what better way to impress her than by cooking something from scratch? So I set my mind to preparing a delicious homemade meal. I wanted to be cool and casual, so I decided on a homemade pasta with a rich, creamy sauce and a side of garlic bread. Simple but elegant, right? I wanted to make the night extra special, so I went all out. I didn't just grab a bag of pre-made pasta. No, I went for the full homemade experience. I spent hours researching recipes and watched countless YouTube videos on how to make fresh pasta dough. I was determined to show her I was a culinary genius. The day of the date arrives, and I'm in full-on chef mode. I'm kneading dough, getting flour all over my kitchen, and making sure everything's just perfect. I even bought a bottle of wine to set the mood. As I'm cooking, I start to feel a bit of pressure. I want everything to be perfect, and it's one of those days where nothing seems to be going right. The dough keeps sticking to the counter, the garlic bread won't crisp up, and I accidentally spill wine all over the countertop. But I soldier on. I keep telling myself that this will be the best meal she's ever had. When she arrives, I greet her with a big smile and a slightly over-the-top, "Welcome to my humble abode." She laughs, and I can see her giving me a good effort kind of look. We sit down to eat, and as I serve the pasta, I notice a slight hesitation in her face. I think it's just me being self-conscious, so I try to brush it off. We start eating, and the conversation is flowing nicely, but I notice something strange happening. My stomach is starting to feel a little off. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I ate too much before she got here. But then, a few bites later, the discomfort turns into actual pain. Like really bad pain. My stomach is cramping up, and I can feel something isn't right. I try to play it cool because I don't want to ruin the night, but I can tell she notices that I'm getting a little pale. So, what's wrong? She asks, concern in her voice. At first, I try to downplay it. Oh, nothing.
Just a bit of a stomach ache.
Probably from eating too fast.
She doesn't buy it.
You don't look too good. Do you need to go to the bathroom? I'm sweating now, trying to figure out what's happening. I get up and excuse myself to the bathroom, but the moment I stand up, the pain gets so intense I nearly collapse. I stumble to the bathroom, and, well, without going into too much detail, I realize something has gone terribly wrong. I've got a full-blown food poisoning situation on my hands. The worst part? The doorbell rings. I can hear it from the bathroom. I have no choice but to go back to the dinner table, but there's no way I'm making it through the night like this. So, I awkwardly shuffle back into the dining room, where she's sitting, looking concerned. I need to tell you something, I say, half sitting, half collapsing into the chair. Her eyes widen. What's going on? Are you okay? I look at her and just blurt it out. I think I gave myself food poisoning. She stares at me for a second, processing. Then, like a scene straight out of a sitcom, I double over with stomach cramps again, and the wine glass I had left on the table falls to the floor and shatters. She stands up, looking horrified, and says, "Okay, we're going to the hospital."
Now.
At this point, I'm in too much pain to argue, so she helps me get into the car. She drives me to the ER, and let me tell you, the whole ride is just a blur of discomfort, sweat, and me apologizing profusely for ruining the night. I'm barely able to explain what happened, but I do tell the ER nurse that I cooked pasta and garlic bread and probably messed something up. She looks at me like I'm an idiot, but doesn't say anything. Fast forward to me being in a hospital gown, hooked up to N4, and still trying to salvage whatever dignity I have left. They tell me that I've likely gotten food poisoning from undercooked eggs in the pasta dough I made. Apparently, I was so eager to make it perfect that I didn't even think about the risks of using raw eggs in homemade pasta. The worst part? The girl I invited over has been sitting in the waiting room for over an hour, getting updates from the nurse. I feel terrible, not only for the physical pain I'm going through, but also for completely ruining a date that was supposed to be a romantic evening. Eventually, they give me some meds to help with the symptoms, and I'm released from the ER. I text the girl to apologize again, and she responds saying she's still concerned, but that she wants to make sure I'm okay. She offers to take me home, and I reluctantly accept, all while wondering what the hell just happened to my life. As we drive back to my place, we're both silent for a moment, and then she says something that completely blows my mind. I still think you're awesome. You know, anyone who is willing to cook a homemade meal from scratch deserves some respect, even if it didn't go as planned. Plus, I'll never forget this date. I honestly don't know how she wasn't completely put off by the whole situation, but she seemed to find it endearing in some way. I apologized 100 more times, and she reassured me that it wasn't the worst date she had ever been on. I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult, but hey, I'll take what I can get. In the end, I learned a valuable lesson. 1. Never cook with raw eggs unless you're absolutely sure what you're doing. 2. Maybe take it slow when trying to impress someone. And 3. If your stomach starts to hurt after dinner, don't try to play it off like it's nothing. Just go straight to the bathroom. So, yeah, TIFU by trying to impress my date with a home-cooked meal and ending up in the ER. Guess it's true. You can't always win. But I'll take the small victory that she's still talking to me. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. TIFU by accidentally offending my best friend during his wedding day. I still can't believe it. It feels like a nightmare that I'll never wake up from. What was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, my best friend's wedding, ended up being a disaster, and I was the one who made it all go wrong. The worst part? I didn't even realize I'd done it until it was way too late. Let me set the scene. It was a beautiful summer afternoon, and the venue was a stunning old church. The ceremony was set to start at 3 p.m., and the whole day had been filled with excitement. My best friend, Sam, and his fiancée, Emily, had been planning this wedding for over a year, and I was honored to be his best man. We'd been friends since we were kids, so this was huge for me. Everything had been going smoothly so far. The groomsmen had all gotten ready without any issues, the bride and her party were running on time, and everyone was in high spirits. The ceremony was scheduled to start in about 30 minutes, and I was just hanging out with the other groomsmen, making small talk, when I got a call from Sam. He asked me to come over to the side of the church, away from everyone else. I didn't think much of it, assuming it was something related to last-minute details. Maybe he needed help with something, I don't know. When I walked over to him, I could see he was looking a little frazzled. Not panicked, but a little stressed. He motioned for me to step closer and said, "Dude, I need your help with something." I immediately said, "Of course, man. What's up?" Sam looked around nervously to make sure no one was listening, then whispered, "Okay, so I know this is really last minute, but I don't want to have a first dance with Emily." Now, I was a bit taken aback. The first dance was one of the most iconic moments of a wedding. Everyone anticipates it. Everyone watches it. So I was confused. "Wait, what do you mean? You don't want to dance with her?" Sam quickly clarified. "I mean, I do, but not in front of everyone. I'm not good with that kind of attention, and I don't know, man. It's not me. But I don't know how to tell Emily without her freaking out. She's been dreaming about this day forever, and she's probably expecting the whole first dance thing." I nodded sympathetically. "Okay, I get it. But, dude, this is important to her. You've got to at least try, right?" He grimaced. "I'll try. But can you, give me a bit of an out? Maybe help me when the time comes? You know, just make it seem like everything's fine, like I didn't totally bail on her." I was a little hesitant. This felt like an odd request, but I figured Sam was just really nervous about the whole spectacle. I didn't want to let him down on the biggest day of his life. So I agreed. "All right, I'll do what I can. I'll talk to Emily before the first dance and tell her you're feeling a little off, like maybe you're nervous or something." Sam sighed in relief. "Thanks, man. I owe you one." I was still a little confused, but figured it would be fine. Weddings are stressful, right? It was probably just a pre-wedding jitters thing, and everything would go perfectly once they were dancing. Little did I know that I had just set in motion a chain of events that would spiral out of control. As the ceremony began, I was focused on making sure everything went smoothly. Sam seemed to get through the vows without fainting, which, in my mind, was a win. The guests clapped, the rings were exchanged, and Sam kissed Emily like it was the most natural thing in the world. It was beautiful. But in the back of my mind, I was still thinking about how Sam was going to get through the first dance. The reception started right after the ceremony. I could see Emily floating around in her gorgeous wedding dress, glowing with happiness. Sam was sticking to the back, though. He looked like a deer in headlights whenever anyone tried to talk to him. I felt for him, but didn't want to draw too much attention. Then it was time for the first dance. The DJ called for attention, and everyone gathered around the dance floor. I was nervously scanning the crowd, trying to figure out what to do next. Sam, in his usual style, was standing off to the side, looking as if he might throw up. Emily walked to the center of the dance floor, beaming with excitement. I could see the love in her eyes, and it made me feel even more anxious about Sam's decision. Before I could do anything, Sam suddenly stood up and started walking toward Emily. I thought, okay, maybe he's ready to do this after all. But then, just as he got halfway to her, he froze. It was like something snapped in him. His face turned pale, and I could tell he was not at all prepared for the moment. He stopped dead in his tracks and muttered, "I can't do this." Now, the worst part? I panicked. Like, full-on panic. I knew Sim had been asking for help, but I thought we had more time. I wasn't ready for him to bail, so publicly. I immediately ran up to him and said, "Hey, man, it's okay. We can figure this out, no big deal." I thought I was being supportive, but instead, it made things worse. Emily, standing on the dance floor, turned to look at us. The entire room fell silent, and the awkwardness was palpable. I could see her face shift from pure excitement to confusion to hurt. It was like a punch to the gut. I tried to salvage the moment. Sam's feeling a little nervous, but he's going to be fine. Let's just take a minute," I said, trying to play it off like it wasn't the disaster it looked like. But Emily wasn't having it. She looked at me, then back at Sam, and said, "What do you mean? What's going on? This is our wedding." I stammered, "It's just he didn't realize how nervous he'd be, that's all. He's not backing out, he's just..." But before I could finish, Emily turned to the crowd and, in front of everyone, said, "Are you serious? This is our wedding. The first dance, Sam. I can't believe you're doing this now." She stormed off the dance floor, leaving Sam and me standing there like idiots. The rest of the night was a blur. Sam tried to apologize to Emily, but she was too upset. I tried to help him smooth things over, but the damage had been done. Sam and Emily barely spoke for the rest of the evening. I could feel the tension in the air. It was horrible. The next day, Sam called me. His voice was quiet, almost defeated. "Dude, I messed up. I messed up so bad."
I didn't know what to say.
I felt terrible for him, but I also knew I could have handled the situation better.
I should have never gotten involved like that.
I should have let Sam handle his own issues, instead of making them worse by trying to cover for him. As of now, Emily and Sam are still married, but things are definitely not the same between them. I think the first dance debacle really took a toll on their relationship, at least in the short term. I feel like I've lost my best friend, not because of what happened between him and Emily, but because I tried to fix something I had no business touching. So yeah, that's the story. I completely screwed up my best friend's wedding. And the worst part? I'm still not sure how to fix it. Don't ever try to help a groom avoid something like that.
Just let them be. Trust me.
You don't want to end up like me. TIFU by accidentally ruining my best friend's wedding with a completely unnecessary speech. It all started about 6 months ago when my best friend, Max, asked me to be his best man. We've been close since college, and it felt like an honor when he asked. He and I had gone through thick and thin together, trouble at school, job struggles, breakups, and even the time he got caught trying to sneak into a club using a fake ID. He was 27 at the time, but he still tried. So, when he said he wanted me to stand by his side on his wedding day, I was over the moon. Max was marrying Olivia, a girl he met on a trip to Spain a couple of years ago. At first, I was skeptical. Olivia was charming, no doubt, but I wasn't sure if she was the one. I had seen Max go through a few relationships that seemed great in the beginning but ended up fizzling out. But after seeing the two of them together, I could tell that this was different. They were perfect for each other, and I could see why he was so in love with her. So, as the best man, I was tasked with writing a speech. I didn't really mind this. I've given a few speeches in the past at family gatherings and a couple of work events, so I knew the basics. Keep it light, make it funny, say something sentimental, and don't make people uncomfortable. Simple, right? I thought. No problem. The wedding day arrived, and I was feeling good. I had rehearsed my speech a couple of times, made sure to include a few jokes about Max's previous attempts at dating, and threw in some sentimental stuff about how they were both great for each other. I was ready to nail it. I could already picture the room laughing, Olivia's smile, Max's proud face. It was going to be one of those speeches people remembered. The wedding itself was beautiful. The venue was a charming little garden in the city, with flowers everywhere and a perfect sunset. Max was looking sharp, and Olivia was stunning in her white dress. Everyone was in high spirits, the drinks were flowing, and people were mingling, talking, and enjoying themselves. Then came the moment of truth. Max tapped me on the shoulder and said it was time for my speech. I stood up, grabbed the microphone, and glanced out at the crowd. There were around 150 people in attendance, family, friends, colleagues, and some of Olivia's relatives who I didn't know very well. I could feel my heart rate pick up, but I pushed through. After all, I had done speeches before. I started off strong with a joke about Max and his extensive experience in the dating world. People laughed, and I felt more comfortable. Then, I went into how Max had met Olivia, how she had come into his life when he least expected it, and how she made him the happiest I had ever seen him. At this point, I was feeling great. I even threw in a little tearjerker about how, even though I was losing my best friend, I was gaining a new family member in Olivia. Everything was going smoothly. Then came the part where I decided to make things a little personal. I had this one funny story in mind that I had been dying to share. It was one of those Max being Max stories, something embarrassing but harmless. The problem was, I didn't realize just how much I was embellishing the story in my mind. Max had a habit of getting very drunk and doing wild things at parties. One time, during a college graduation party, he got so wasted that he thought he could dance like Michael Jackson. Spoiler alert, he couldn't. Not even close. He ended up slipping on a dance floor, hitting his head on a nearby table, and then spending the rest of the night convinced that he had invented a new dance move called the crab shuffle. I thought it was hilarious, so I began telling the story to the crowd. But in my excitement, I didn't really gauge how this story might come across to Olivia's family, who didn't know Max in that light. What I thought was a funny, embarrassing story, they probably found cringeworthy or even inappropriate. I was caught up in the laughter of the crowd and went on a bit longer than I should have. As I got into the details of Max performing the crab shuffle, I saw Olivia's face freeze. She was smiling, but it didn't seem like the smile of someone who thought it was funny. It was more of a tight-lipped, forced smile, and I could see the color draining from her face. Max was standing there with his hand over his face, trying to signal me to stop. But I couldn't. I was on a roll, the crowd was laughing, and I thought I was just making everyone enjoy themselves. Then came the punchline of the story, the part where Max ended up in the ER for a concussion and had to explain to the doctor that it was because he was trying to moonwalk while drunk. The room erupted in laughter. But Olivia's reaction was not what I had expected. She looked at me, then back at Max, her expression turning from discomfort to outright anger. The laughter from the crowd slowly died down, and I realized something was very, very wrong. Max quickly stepped forward, grabbed the microphone from me, and said, all right, let's move on."
Thanks, man.
He sounded strained, and there was an awkward silence. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing on me. Olivia didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. Her arms were crossed, and she looked like she was about to cry. The vibe in the room shifted from lighthearted to tense, and I felt like I had just stepped into quicksand. I immediately apologized, trying to recover by saying something about how great the night was and how happy I was for them. But Olivia wasn't having it. She got up from her seat and walked out of the room. People started whispering, and Max stood there, looking like he wanted to disappear. The rest of the evening was a blur. Olivia came back after about 20 minutes, but the energy had completely shifted. The wedding felt strained. Max tried to go through the rest of the evening as planned, but it was clear that my speech had put a damper on things. The rest of the night was awkward, and Olivia didn't speak to me much after that. I felt absolutely horrible. Max and I went for a walk outside during the reception, and he told me that while he appreciated the effort, Olivia was upset because it felt like I had been mocking him in front of her family. I had crossed a line, and it was hard for her to see the humor in it. I had ruined her big day with a stupid, unnecessary story that wasn't even relevant to the celebration. In the following weeks, Max and I talked things through, but things were never quite the same. Olivia forgave me, but I could tell she didn't fully forget. She still brings up that speech every now and then, usually with a forced smile. I learned a hard lesson about knowing your audience and not getting too carried away in the moment. Some jokes just aren't meant to be told, especially not at someone else's wedding. So yeah, I definitely fucked up. Big time. That day will haunt me forever, and I'll never hear the end of it from Max or Olivia. TLDR, gave a best man speech at my best friend's wedding, told an embarrassing story about him thinking he invented a dance move, made the bride uncomfortable, ruined the night, and will never live it down. TIFU by accidentally locking myself in my own attic with a mountain of laundry and no way to get out. So this all started a few weeks ago when my girlfriend, Jess, and I decided to do some much-needed spring cleaning. Our house had accumulated clutter over the winter months, and we were both pretty tired of looking at the piles of things we were no longer using. It was one of those weekends where the weather was perfect for getting things done inside, and we figured we'd knock out the cleaning, sort through old clothes, and maybe donate a bunch of stuff. I was tasked with organizing our attic, which had become a sort of catch-all for everything that didn't have a designated spot in the house. We used the attic mainly for storage, and over time, it became a bit of a dumping ground for old furniture, random boxes, and most importantly, laundry. Jess had been using the attic to store a ton of clean laundry that we never got around to folding. There were bags upon bags of clean clothes that had just been tossed up there, waiting to be dealt with later. Well, later had finally arrived, and I was standing at the bottom of the stairs leading up to the attic, staring at a mountain of laundry in front of me. I had no idea how I was going to tackle it, but I knew it had to be done. The attic is accessed by a pull-down ladder, which I honestly hadn't used in months, and I quickly realized how long it had been since the last time I was up there. I pulled down the ladder, grabbed the first couple of bags, and hauled them up into the attic. The second I stepped onto the attic floor, I felt like I was walking into a cave. There was dust everywhere, and the air smelled stale. It was a mix of old clothes, cardboard boxes, and what I later realized was an unfortunately placed moldy pumpkin that I had forgotten about from last Halloween. But I digress. The real problem started when I started pulling the laundry out of the bags. As I was sorting through the clothes, folding, stacking, and trying to make sense of the chaos, I lost track of time. My phone was downstairs charging, and I didn't think to bring it with me. I'd gotten so immersed in my task that I forgot the most important thing: the ladder. About 90 minutes into my laundry session, I heard Jess calling my name from downstairs. I'd heard her faintly at first, but it wasn't until she called a few more times that I realized she was looking for me. I didn't think much of it, assuming she just wanted to make sure I was making progress, or maybe she had a question about where a particular box should go. But when I walked toward the pull-down ladder to head back downstairs, that's when I realized my mistake. The ladder was gone. Now, I'm not talking about just being out of place. I'm talking about the fact that the ladder had retracted back up into the ceiling. I immediately went into panic mode and tugged at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My first thought was, okay, no big deal. I'll just jump up and pull it down. However, the attic had low clearance, and I had no chance of reaching the ladder, even if I jumped. The space was cramped, and there was a heap of laundry piled everywhere, so there wasn't even enough room for me to jump effectively. I had no idea how the ladder managed to retract itself, but it seemed like the simplest answer was that I had somehow triggered it while climbing up. Maybe I leaned against the ceiling or shifted the wrong way as I was working, but whatever the case, I was now completely stuck in the attic. My next instinct was to yell for Jess, but then I remembered that my phone was downstairs. The only option was to try to get the ladder down, but after several failed attempts to dislodge it, I realized that I was in bigger trouble than I had initially thought. I thought about how I could possibly climb out of the attic, but as I said, the space was cramped, and there were no other escape routes. The only way out was through the ladder. It wasn't like I could break down the door either. The attic entrance was sealed shut with a heavy piece of wood that, despite being weak, was still too much for me to push away. After trying to free the ladder for a while, I did what any sensible person would do in a panic. I sat down on the floor and began to mentally prepare myself for the fact that I might be stuck here for a while. I glanced around, trying to find anything that might help me. It was just old furniture and boxes, nothing useful. Even the laundry piles felt like a cruel joke at that point. I figured I might as well get comfortable, so I started folding some clothes to pass the time.
Who knows?
Maybe Jess would come up to check on me eventually. I wasn't worried about starving. We had plenty of snacks in the kitchen. But I was starting to feel the anxiety building. What if Jess didn't notice I was missing? What if she thought I had gone out or was hiding downstairs for some reason? The longer I stayed up there, the more I thought about how dumb this whole situation was. 2 hours passed. I finally heard Jess coming up the stairs. At first, it was just a quiet sound. Her footsteps, then the sound of her calling my name again. But then I heard her voice growing more frantic. "Where the hell are you?" At this point, I'd calmed down a bit and figured it was time to shout back. I yelled at the top of my lungs, "I'm stuck in the attic." She responded with confusion at first. "What do you mean you're stuck?" "I can't get the ladder down," I screamed, already feeling silly. Jess rushed up the stairs to the attic, where she found me standing awkwardly next to a pile of laundry, slightly embarrassed and out of breath. Her first words were, "How did you manage to do this?" "I leave you alone for 1 minute." She immediately tried to pull down the ladder, but much to my horror, she couldn't get it either. At this point, I was convinced I would be trapped forever, but Jess didn't give up. She got a broom from downstairs and tried using it to knock the ladder down. I'm not sure what possessed her, but I'll admit it worked. After several attempts, the ladder finally dropped. Jess pulled it down, and I climbed down with the grace of a man who had been stuck in an attic for hours. After a dramatic and slightly mortifying descent, I was finally on solid ground again. Jess stood there, trying not to laugh too much, and I couldn't help but laugh at myself. So, yeah, that was the day I got trapped in my own attic while doing laundry. I learned a couple of valuable lessons. Always keep your phone with you, and, for the love of all things holy, make sure the ladder is securely in place before you start getting cozy in a cramped attic. To full by accidentally ruining my best friend's wedding because of a stupid mistake with my speech. So, for context, I've been friends with Mike for over 15 years. We grew up together, went to the same schools, had the same group of friends. We've been through thick and thin. When he told me he was getting married to Sarah, I was over the moon for him. I've always known Sarah. She's been part of our friend group since high school, and I've always liked her. They're the definition of a perfect couple. They complement each other in a way that makes you believe in love. You know? I've been in a lot of weddings before, but this was different. This was Mike, my best friend. The person I considered more of a brother than just a friend. Naturally, I was asked to be the best man, and I was more than happy to accept. Being the best man is a big responsibility, and I didn't take it lightly. I started planning my speech well in advance. I wanted it to be meaningful but funny, heartfelt but not overly emotional. I spent weeks writing and rewriting it, making sure I hit the right notes. I knew this speech had to be perfect. The wedding day arrived, and I was on cloud 9. The ceremony was beautiful, and seeing Mike's face as Sarah walked down the aisle was priceless. I knew this was going to be a day none of us would ever forget. As the night wore on, everyone enjoyed themselves. The food was amazing, the music was great, and people were dancing and celebrating like there was no tomorrow. But then it was time for the speeches. The other speeches went off without a hitch. The maid of honor gave a sweet speech, talking about how Sarah was her best friend and how happy she was for the couple. The father of the bride got a little emotional, but it was heartwarming. Then it was my turn. I had rehearsed my speech countless times, and I felt ready. I stood up, glass in hand, and walked to the microphone. I made the usual jokes about how I was probably the most underqualified person to give a speech at a wedding, but I had been Mike's best friend for so long, so I had a few things to say. People laughed, and I took a deep breath, feeling good about how it was going. I started to tell stories about Mike and me growing up, the hilarious moments we shared, how we both used to dream about our futures when we were kids, dreams that, in a way, had come true. I talked about the first time Mike met Sarah and how I knew she was the one the moment I saw the way they interacted. I was on a roll. Everything was going great, and I felt like I was nailing it. I had everyone laughing, a few people wiping away tears, the perfect balance. But then, I made a huge mistake. You see, I had written this part of the speech where I wanted to talk about how Mike and Sarah balanced each other out. How Mike was the spontaneous, adventure-seeking guy who sometimes got lost in his own head, and Sarah was the grounding, level-headed one who always kept him grounded. The problem was I got a little too caught up in the flow of my speech, and I accidentally referred to Mike as being a bit of a mess when it came to his personal life. I meant it as a joke, like he was all over the place until Sarah came into his life and made him more responsible, but I didn't stop to think about how it might come across. Here's where I made the mistake. Instead of laughing or just nodding it off, there was an awkward silence. I quickly glanced over at Sarah's face, and I could see her stiffen a little. It wasn't anger, not yet at least, but it was definitely discomfort. Mike's face went red, and I could see him immediately glance over at Sarah. I tried to keep going, hoping the awkwardness would just blow over, but it didn't. It got worse. I wanted to steer the speech back on track, so I dove into another story about the time Mike and I had gone on a camping trip where he completely forgot to pack anything useful, including the tent poles. I laughed as I told the story, but no one else did. The room was uncomfortably quiet now, with people exchanging awkward glances. I looked back at Sarah and saw her eyes starting to well up. That's when I realized I had gone too far. It wasn't just a casual slip-up. I had made Sarah feel like I was belittling Mike, and possibly her too. Mike tried to give me a reassuring smile, but I could tell he was uncomfortable. By this point, my heart was pounding, and I felt like the entire room was watching me crash and burn. I quickly wrapped up the speech, saying something about how happy I was for them and how I couldn't wait to see what the future held for them. People clapped, but it wasn't the applause I was expecting. It was polite, forced. I sat back down at the table, my face burning with embarrassment. The rest of the evening was a blur. I tried to go over and apologize to Sarah, but she was surrounded by family, and I didn't want to make a bigger scene. Mike came up to me later and gave me a half-hearted "it's fine," but I could tell he was upset. He didn't look at me the same way for the rest of the night. It hurt, honestly. I've known this guy forever, and now I felt like I had messed up one of the most important days of his life. Later that night, when the wedding was winding down and people were saying their goodbyes, Sarah came up to me. She didn't yell or say anything harsh, but she pulled me aside and simply said, "Please be more careful with your words next time." That wasn't funny. It hurt. That hit me harder than anything. I apologized profusely, and she accepted my apology, but I could tell the damage had been done. The next day, Mike sent me a message. "We need to talk." I thought I was going to lose my best friend. But when we finally sat down and talked, it was mostly him explaining how I'd made Sarah feel bad on their big day. I understood. I was completely in the wrong. I just wanted to make him laugh, but I hurt him and the person he loved most. I can't even explain how stupid I feel about the whole thing. I've never been a person to put my foot in my mouth, but in that moment, I was too caught up in trying to be funny and trying to give the perfect speech. I ruined one of the most important moments of my life, and possibly Mike and Sarah's. I've learned that some moments are too precious for jokes, and no matter how well-intended, words can hurt. To make up for it, I've promised to be a better friend and to always be more mindful in the future. I'm hoping this all blows over, but it's definitely going to take some time. I've apologized to both Mike and Sarah, and I know it'll take a while for them to fully forgive me. TLDR, gave a speech at my best friend's wedding, tried to be funny, made an awful joke that unintentionally hurt both the bride and groom, ruined the moment, and have been trying to make things right ever since. It was supposed to be a simple evening, a quiet night in with my girlfriend, a couple of beers, and maybe a movie. Things started out perfectly fine, but in hindsight, I should have just stayed in bed all night and ignored the world. I don't even know how it all escalated the way it did. Let me give you some background first, though. I live in a small apartment with my girlfriend, Emily. We've been dating for about a year, and despite a few bumps here and there, everything has been great. We're a pretty relaxed couple. On weekends, we like to kick back, order pizza, maybe watch a few episodes of our favorite show, and just enjoy each other's company. Nothing too out of the ordinary, really. So it was a Friday night. Emily and I had decided to skip our usual plans for the night. We were feeling a little lazy, and we both agreed that staying in would be the best option. We ordered pizza, pepperoni because we both love it, and grabbed a six-pack of craft beer to go with it. The perfect setup for a cozy night in. At some point, after a couple of beers and maybe a bit too much pizza, Emily suggested we play a board game. We had been gifted a few board games by friends over the holidays, but we hadn't gotten around to playing them yet. I thought it was a great idea. I'm not the most competitive person, but I'm game for a little friendly rivalry now and then. I didn't expect it to lead to a full-blown catastrophe. We pulled out the game and set it up. It was a trivia game, where you answer questions in various categories. It seemed simple enough, and I figured I would have an advantage since I tend to remember a lot of random facts. Emily, on the other hand, is a bit more artsy and creative, but she's not exactly a trivia expert. I expected to win easily. But, of course, things never go according to plan. The game started innocently enough. We took turns answering questions, laughing at the ridiculousness of some of them, and just enjoying the time spent together. We were having fun until I started getting cocky. I was winning by a landslide, and Emily was starting to get a little frustrated. I didn't notice at first. I thought it was just her usual playful attitude when things weren't going her way. But as the game went on, I started to notice she was getting quieter. Her answers were a bit more offhand, and she seemed distracted. I, of course, took this as an opportunity to crack a few jokes, as I usually do when I'm winning. I teased her lightly, saying things like, "I guess you're just not as smart as you thought, and maybe next time, you should read a book or two." Yeah, in hindsight, probably not my best move. She didn't say anything, but I could tell that something was off. There was a shift in her mood. It wasn't until I answered a question wrong, just one question, mind you, that things really started to unravel. I had been so cocky that when I got a question wrong, I didn't even try to hide my embarrassment. I laughed it off with a half-hearted joke, but instead of the usual playful response I'd expect from Emily, she just looked at me with a blank stare. "Are you okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned now. She didn't respond at first. Then, with an eerie calmness, she said, "I'm fine." Her tone was so flat, so emotionless, that I couldn't tell if she was really upset or if I was just imagining things. I tried to push the moment aside. It was just a board game, right? But the tension in the air was thick. I could practically feel the weight of it. I could sense that I had done something wrong, but I wasn't sure exactly what. So, naturally, I did what any rational person would do. I doubled down. I tried to make her laugh again by cracking more jokes, but all I got was silence. Emily wasn't responding the way she usually did. She was just staring at the board, her hand resting on her chin. The worst part? I could tell that she wasn't even paying attention to the game anymore. She was lost in thought, and I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. After a few more moments of uncomfortable silence, I finally broke the tension. "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be an asshole," I said. "You know I was just joking, right?" She nodded, but it was clear she wasn't convinced. "Yeah, I know," she said quietly. "I just don't think you realize how much you've been, well, kind of a jerk tonight." I was taken aback. I honestly didn't think I had done anything that bad. Sure, I teased her a little, but it wasn't like I had been mean or anything. But the look on her face told me something was definitely wrong. "Come on, Emily. I didn't mean it. I thought we were just having fun," I said, trying to backpedal. She shook her head. "It's not just tonight. You've been acting this way for a while now, and I've been trying to ignore it." My stomach dropped. I had no idea what she was talking about. I had been acting the same way I always do, lighthearted, jokey, not taking life too seriously. But then, like a switch flipping, I realized that I'd been taking her for granted. I hadn't been listening to her as much as I should have. I hadn't been acknowledging her feelings. I had been more focused on myself and my own fun than on her needs or emotions. The more I thought about it, the more I realized she was right. For the past few months, I had been so wrapped up in my own world that I hadn't paid enough attention to hers. I hadn't been as supportive as I should have been. I hadn't been as considerate. I hadn't been the boyfriend I thought I was. So there I was sitting across from her, a little tipsy, a little embarrassed, and a whole lot guilty. I tried to fix it, of course. I apologized over and over again, trying to explain myself, but it felt like the damage had already been done. I'd pushed her away, and I didn't know how to fix it in that moment. We didn't finish the game that night. We didn't even finish the beers. I slept on the couch because Emily needed some space. And I spent the entire night lying there, wide awake, replaying everything in my head. I had made a fool of myself, and more importantly, I had hurt the person I cared about the most. The next morning we talked more. It wasn't the easiest conversation, but it was necessary. I apologized again, and she explained how she'd been feeling. She wasn't mad at me. She just wanted me to be more aware of how I was making her feel. We've been working on it since then, and things are better now, but I'll never forget how quickly everything spiraled out of control. It was just a game. A dumb trivia game. But it was a reminder that small actions can have big consequences. And sometimes, when you think you're just having fun, you might be inadvertently hurting someone you love.
So yeah.
To fool by being too cocky during a board game and ignoring my girlfriend's feelings until it was almost too late. Lesson learned. To fool by accidentally sending my friend a picture of my mom's boob job instead of a meme. I've always been a huge fan of memes. Not only do they give me a laugh when I'm scrolling through my phone, but I also love sharing them with my friends. So, naturally, when I came across a hilarious one involving a cat and a pizza, I knew my best friend, Jake, would get a kick out of it. Jake and I have been friends since high school, and we've pretty much shared everything with each other, from embarrassing moments to life-changing news. So, I picked up my phone one afternoon and went to my gallery to find the meme I wanted to send him. I should have known better than to not check my gallery first. But I was in a rush, and I just swiped right over the first image that popped up. Now, let me set the scene for you. My mom, who's in her late 50s, recently decided to undergo some elective surgery. She had always been self-conscious about her chest, and after years of thinking about it, she finally decided to get a boob job. She had spent a lot of time researching doctors and doing her due diligence, and, to be honest, I was fully supportive of her decision. After all, it's her body, and she had every right to feel confident and happy. But here's the thing, I wasn't exactly involved in the process. I knew she was considering it, but I didn't expect to be as directly involved as I ended up being. After her surgery, my mom insisted on sending me updates. Not just any updates, mind you, but full-on look at my new body photos. You know, just casual snaps of her in a robe or post-op shots showing off her new curves. She wanted me to feel comfortable with her decision and assured me that I'd be proud of her. Here's where I messed up. My phone was filled with these updates. I had a ton of photos from my mom's post-surgery journey, pictures of her in bandages, healing, and eventually in all her new, boosted glory. It was a bit awkward for me, but I just figured she was excited, so I humored her by responding with "looks great" or "so happy for you." But let's be real, some of the pictures were just not something I was used to seeing my mom send me. Ever. I know what you're thinking. Why the hell didn't I just delete those pictures? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I felt bad about not being more supportive or simply didn't want to hurt her feelings. I just left them in my gallery, buried in a folder that was way too easy to overlook. Fast forward to that fateful day when I tried to send a meme to Jake. I was on autopilot like I always am, just scrolling through the gallery and looking for a funny image to share. I didn't pay attention to the photo I was selecting. I just tapped on it and hit send. Jake's response came almost immediately. Dude. Why are you sending me a picture of your mom's, you know. I froze. That was not the meme I had intended to send. I stared at my phone in horror as I realized that I had just sent Jake a picture of my mom's breast augmentation. Not a funny meme. Not a cute cat photo. No, it was the picture where my mom was proudly showing off her freshly done chest, post-surgery, and all. I immediately typed back, "Wait, what?
I didn't mean to send that.
Sorry, I'll delete it." But it was too late. Jake had already seen it. He replied with a string of laughing emojis, followed by, "Bro, what the hell? Your mom's got some serious work done. I mean, I know you've mentioned it, but I didn't expect that kind of sneak peek. It's definitely an upgrade." I wanted to die. I quickly started typing out an apology, trying to explain myself. But Jake, being the absolute legend that he is, responded with, "It's all good, man. No shame in it. Honestly, I'd love to see the meme you meant to send, though. This was unexpected, but not the worst thing I've ever seen." I could barely contain my panic. I immediately went to delete the photo and send a follow-up message to apologize. But then I realized something horrifying. I had sent that image to my entire group chat too. The same group chat that includes not only Jake but also two of my other friends, Josh and Kyle, and my cousin Emily. I frantically started opening the group chat to apologize before anyone else saw it. But when I opened it, I found something even worse. The entire group had already seen the picture. Josh had replied with, "Dude, I was wondering why your mom looked so happy lately." Kyle had sent, "A new world record for mom selfies. Tell her congrats for me, bro." Emily, who's known me since childhood and has always been like a sister to me, just sent a crying laughing emoji with, "I did not need to see that. But damn, your mom's looking good. Can you hook me up with her surgeon?" I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. What had started as a simple meme share had turned into a full-scale family embarrassment. Every single one of my friends and family members had seen what my mom's new chest looked like, and there was no taking it back. The messages kept coming in. Jake texted me again. "Honestly, though, this is the kind of content I didn't know I needed. But for real, we're all cool. No judgment." Josh added, "This is the most wild thing to happen in this chat in a while. But I'm laughing with you, not at you, promise." Kyle, I mean, it's a good thing you're not single anymore, because this would have been awkward. But props to your mom for feeling confident. She's living her best life. Emily, she's actually slaying it. But dude, I cannot unsee this. Thanks for the nightmares. I felt like I was going to combust. There was no coming back from this. I started double-checking every single photo in my gallery, making sure I didn't accidentally send anything else that could end up in the wrong hands. It took me over an hour to calm down, and by then, the group chat had settled into a mix of hilarious memes and lighthearted jokes. But I was still mortified. Later that night, I decided to call my mom and tell her what had happened. I figured if anyone would be sympathetic, it would be her. After I explained everything, she just laughed. "Well, I guess you should be glad I didn't send you the post-surgery photos of me in the hospital bed, huh?" she said with a chuckle. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I mean, if my mom wasn't going to make this a big deal, maybe I shouldn't either. Still, I can't look at my phone the same way anymore. So yeah, TIFU by sending a picture of my mom's boob job to my entire friend group. Not the kind of content I wanted to be sharing today, but at least it gave everyone a good laugh. Lesson learned: always check your gallery before hitting send. You never know what's lurking in there. TIFU by accidentally breaking into a stranger's house and thinking it was my friend's place. This is one of those stories that's going to haunt me for a long time. I still can't believe it actually happened, and every time I think about it, I just cringe. It all started a few weeks ago when my best friend, Jenna, invited me to hang out at her new place. She just moved into a charming little 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood, and I was excited to check it out. Jenna and I had been friends for years, and we always made time to catch up, no matter how busy life got. She had recently broken up with her long-term boyfriend and was starting fresh, and I knew she'd appreciate the company. She texted me the address, and I thought I saved it in my phone. The day of our meetup came, and I was ready to go. She hadn't responded to any of my texts that morning, but I assumed she was probably busy getting settled in, so I didn't think much of it. I arrived at what I thought was her street. It wasn't a busy part of town, more of a residential area with trees lining the streets and rows of cute little houses with neat lawns. I was excited to see Jenna's new place, so I parked my car on the side of the road, grabbed a bottle of wine I'd brought for us to share, and started walking up the sidewalk. When I got to the door of what I assumed was her apartment, I noticed a few things that should have tipped me off that something was off. First, the building was oddly quiet. No one was walking in or out, and I didn't hear any voices or sounds coming from inside. Normally, on a Saturday afternoon, you'd expect a little more activity, but I didn't think too much of it. Second, the door was slightly ajar. It wasn't wide open, but just enough for me to push it the rest of the way with my hand. I wasn't sure why it was left like that, but I thought, well, maybe Jen is expecting me and didn't bother locking the door. She's always been a little careless with that stuff. So, without hesitation, I walked in. The entryway was dark, and the interior smelled faintly of fresh paint and wood polish. There was a small hallway with a couple of doors on each side, and I figured one of them was probably the living room. I called out for Jenna, but there was no response. I assumed she was probably in her room or the kitchen, getting ready for a hangout. "Jenna? You here?" I called again, holding the wine bottle in my hand like it was some sort of peace offering. I heard no response, which was odd but not alarming at first. After all, she could have been busy with something or just ignoring me because she was concentrating on setting up her new place. I cautiously walked down the hallway, passing what I assumed was a guest room on the right. The door was closed, but I didn't think much of it. I then noticed a door on my left which was cracked open just a little bit. Thinking that it was her bedroom, I pushed the door open without knocking because, well, it's Jenna, and we've known each other forever. To my surprise, it wasn't Jenna's bedroom. Instead, there was a middle-aged man sitting at a desk, wearing a plaid shirt and glasses. He looked up at me, startled, as I froze in the doorway. The man's expression was a mix of confusion and alarm, and I realized, way too late, that this wasn't Jenna's apartment at all. It was someone else's. For a split second, neither of us said anything. My mind was racing. I blinked a couple of times, trying to process what I was seeing. Was this some kind of prank? Did I enter the wrong place? Was this Jenna's neighbor's apartment? But the whole vibe felt off. This man had no idea who I was, and I had no idea who he was. Who are you?" the man asked, clearly uncomfortable. His tone was calm but defensive, like he was trying to gauge whether I was a threat or just an idiot. My heart sank as it hit me. I had literally just broken into a stranger's house. I had no idea how I hadn't figured it out sooner. "I am so sorry," I stammered, quickly backing away from the doorway. "I thought this was my friend's place. I must have gotten the wrong apartment. I'm so sorry." The man raised an eyebrow. "Your friend? What's her name?" I froze for a moment, my mind blanking. What was Jenna's new address again? I thought I knew it by heart, but now everything was a blur. I felt stupid for not double-checking. "Her name is Jenna. She just moved here," I babbled, grasping for anything that might explain why I was standing in the middle of this guy's room. The man just stared at me. "Right, okay." He stood up from his desk, clearly not sure how to handle the situation. "Well, this isn't her place. You've definitely come to the wrong house." I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment. "Yeah, I realize that now," I muttered, trying to back out of the room. "I'm so sorry for intruding. I'll just go." But as I turned around, I made the mistake of looking around the apartment again. Something about the whole scene felt even stranger now that I realized I wasn't just at the wrong address. I was inside someone's home, completely uninvited. The walls were decorated with photos of a family I didn't recognize, and there were small details like a bowl of fruit on the coffee table and a remote control for a TV in the corner. It was very clearly a lived-in home. I quickly exited the room, backing down the hallway in an attempt to get out of the apartment as fast as possible. I didn't even bother to close the door behind me as I made a quick beeline for the front door. My heart was racing. I had no idea if the man was going to follow me or call the cops, and all I wanted to do was get as far away from this awkward situation as possible. I rushed out the front door and back to my car. I don't think I've ever driven away from a place faster in my life. I sat there in my car for a minute, trying to collect myself and figure out what had just happened. I was so embarrassed. I couldn't stop laughing at how dumb I had been. When I finally got to the real address where Jenna was living, I couldn't even bring myself to tell her what had happened. It was too ridiculous. So, I just chalked it up to, well, this is an awkward day, and pretended like nothing had happened. Jenna didn't find out about my little break-in adventure until weeks later when we were talking about strange situations, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. She thought it was hilarious, and to be fair, it is pretty funny in hindsight, but I still get embarrassed thinking about that day. So, moral of the story? Double-check the address next time, and maybe don't assume every open door is an invitation. TLDR, accidentally broke into a stranger's apartment, thinking it was my friend's place. Found out the hard way it wasn't her house. Had to leave in shame before the man called the cops. A few months ago, I, 32M, volunteered to house sit for my boss, Gary, while he and his wife went on a 2-week luxury cruise around Scandinavia. They live in a very posh neighborhood, the kind where people name their Wi-Fi after wine labels and pay someone to clean their mailboxes. I live in a studio apartment over a vape shop. So when Gary casually asked during a meeting if anyone would be willing to watch his house while he was away, just to water the plants, check the mail, and feed the koi, I jumped at the chance. It was also strategic. Gary and I aren't tight, and this felt like a good opportunity to get in his good books. Also, his fridge had a dedicated cheese drawer. I know that's not relevant, but it made me feel things. Anyway, he gave me the rundown. Everything was automated except for 3 things. Feed the koi once a day, water the indoor bonsai every other day, and don't, under any circumstances, go into the locked room in the basement. I made a joke about it being a sex dungeon. He did not laugh. The first few days were uneventful. The koi were these big, majestic creatures that swam around like they were better than me. Feeding them was oddly therapeutic. I'd sprinkle the food in and watch them glide to the surface like underwater royalty. I started talking to them. Named a few. My favorite was a chunky white and orange one-eye called Gorbachev. One night, around day 6, I came home a little tipsy from hanging out with friends and noticed that the koi pond's water level looked a little low. Nothing drastic, just slightly off. I figured maybe it evaporates or something. I remembered Gary mentioned there was a garden hose in the shed and a valve that connects directly to the koi filtration system. I drunkenly decided to top off the pond like I was refilling a Brita. This is the part where I should have stopped. But no. I am a hero, a koi savior. So I hooked the hose into the pond's intake system and turned the valve. A little water started to flow. I watched for maybe 15 seconds, and everything looked fine. Confident in my aquatic skills, I decided to let it run for a few minutes while I went inside to heat up some leftover pad thai. I forgot about the hose. For 4 hours. When I woke up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat on Gary's ridiculously comfortable Italian leather sectional, I realized instantly something was wrong. I couldn't hear the soft gurgle of the koi pond waterfall through the open patio door like I usually did. Instead, I heard splashing. I ran outside. The entire backyard looked like a Monet painting after a hurricane. Water had overflowed from the pond, soaked through the landscaping, and flooded into the lower level of the house. The koi were no longer royalty. They were prisoners of a rapidly drying yard, flopping around like soggy socks. Gorbachev was upside down. I screamed. Panicking, I ran around with a pool net and a mop bucket, trying to scoop the fish back into the pond.
Some were okay. Some were not.
I had no idea how many there were to begin with, so I couldn't even tell how many had died. I was sobbing, scooping, and cursing, all at the same time. It was like a tragic scene from Finding Nemo directed by Werner Herzog. I worked until dawn trying to clean up the mess, but I'm not a fish coroner or a landscaper. There was mud everywhere, water damage in the basement, and a faint smell of decay. I had to go to work that morning, too, where I spent most of my day Googling things like how to resuscitate koi and average cost of koi fish versus therapy. As if that wasn't enough, that afternoon a neighborhood kid walked into the backyard, apparently friends with Gary's daughter, and screamed when he saw me burying one of the fish in the garden. I had no good explanation. His mom showed up 10 minutes later, and I tried to explain it was an accident, but she took one look at the scene, muddy ground, shovel, half-filled pond, and screamed, "What did you do?" like I was some suburban fish serial killer. Later that evening, The HOA president stopped by to inform me I had violated the water overflow agreement. What even is that? And that I'd be receiving a formal citation. I tried to apologize, but he just said, "We warned Gary about airbending," and walked off like a judgmental pelican. I had 4 more days left in the house, and I lived them in a state of pure dread and shame. Every time I looked at the pond, I imagined tiny koi ghosts flipping me off. When Gary came back, I met him at the door, like a dog that knows it peed in your shoe. I immediately confessed, thinking maybe honesty would lessen the blow. It did not. Turns out those koi were very expensive. Imported. One of them had belonged to his wife's father. Gorbachev may have been worth more than my car. The flooding had destroyed a vintage rug in the basement and shorted out a wine fridge. The worst part? He wasn't even mad. He was disappointed. Like deeply disappointed. The kind of disappointment that seeps into your bones. I offered to pay for everything. He said we'd work something out. A week later, I was reassigned to a new team, under a manager named Carl who calls everyone champ and thinks Excel is fun. I haven't been invited to another team happy hour since. I also think I might be a neighborhood urban legend now. One of my coworkers who lives nearby told me his daughter referred to me as the fish man who cries. Moral of the story: don't mix alcohol, responsibility, and aquatic life. Also, never trust a hose. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.